Hi, welcome to Exploring with Scientists. My name is Alice, and I'm a graduate student at Michigan State University. I study moths and butterflies, which are one type of pollinator. And in this video, we're going to talk all about pollinators. So let's get started. Do you have a favorite pollinator? Maybe you don't know that much about pollinators, but we'll learn more in this video. Today, my favorite pollinator is a sphinx moth. But there are so many types of cool pollinators that my favorite kind changes all the time. You might be wondering, well, what does it mean to be a pollinator and what's pollination? Pollination is the event where plants make more of themselves. So pollen from one flower is transferred to another flower, and that allows that second flower to make seeds. I'm sure you've seen and probably eaten a seed. Things like pumpkin seeds are seeds, and fruits like apples and strawberries have seeds in them. And when a seed is planted in the ground, it becomes a plant. So that's what pollination is, but what's a pollinator? Well, a pollinator is any animal that transfers pollen from one flower to another. In this picture, there's a bee covered in pumpkin pollen. And pollinators are really important. 80% of plants that have flowers rely on animals to pollinate them. Now, there are many different types of pollinators. Some examples are ants, bats, bees, wasps, flies, beetles, butterflies, hummingbirds, moths, and so many more. Now, bees are some of the most important pollinators. And they're important because 1/3 of the world's food relies on bees for pollination. So a lot of the plants that we eat need a bee to pollinate them. Like I said, a lot of the food we eat relies on pollinators. So we can thank pollinators for foods like cashews, bananas, grapes, peaches, mangoes, and tomatoes. Some of the animals that pollinate these foods are bees, moths, fruit bats, wasps, bumblebees. This squirrel is enjoying the fruits of pollination. Now, I just talked about some of the more well-known pollinators, but there are some crazy, unexpected pollinators. One unexpected pollinator is lemurs, and lemurs are the world's largest pollinator. They live in the country of Madagascar, which is an island off the coast of Africa, and they pollinate a type of tree that lives in Africa, or in Madagascar. Another kind of unexpected pollinator is slugs. I wouldn't have thought of slugs as a pollinator before I learned about this, but slugs actually pollinate wild ginger, and wild ginger is a plant we have here in Michigan. So maybe one day you or I will see a slug pollinating wild ginger. How crazy would that be? Now, one last unexpected pollinator is actually humans. Humans sometimes pollinate by hand some of the food that we eat. One example is vanilla. Humans are actually responsible for pollinating most of the world's vanilla because in many places that vanilla grows, it doesn't have a natural animal pollinator. So humans who want to grow that vanilla actually have to transfer pollen from one vanilla flower to a next with their hands. So how did I get interested in pollinators? Well, as we've learned today, they're really cool and interesting and important. But I got interested in pollinators because of the idea of generalists and specialists. So a generalist pollinator is one that visits many different types of flowers. It's not really picky. An example of a generalist is the European honeybee. It visits many different types of flowers. It doesn't have very strong preferences. But there are some pollinators that are specialists. And a specialist pollinator is one that visits only one type of flower. And specialist pollinators often have really special relationships with the flower that they pollinate. One example is the yucca flower and the yucca moth. And yucca flowers and yucca moths are found pretty commonly in the southeastern part of the United States, like Arizona. But there are some yucca flowers here in Michigan too. Now, yucca moths are the only animal that pollinates the yucca flower. So to the yucca plant, the yucca moth is really important. What happens is a female yucca moth will lay her eggs in the flower, and at the same time, she brings pollen to the flower to pollinate it so that it produces seeds. Meantime, her eggs develop into caterpillars, and when they wake up, they eat the seeds that were produced via the pollination of their mom. So I think these types of relationships are really cool and interesting, and that's how I got interested in pollinators. So at the beginning of this video, I asked you what your favorite type of pollinator was, and I told you that my favorite pollinator, at least today, is a sphinx moth. Now, there are lots of different types of sphinx moths, but one that I really love is the azalea sphinx moth because it's so pretty and pink. Now, in this video, we learned lots about pollinators, and I want to know if you have a new favorite pollinator based on the information that we learned today. Say it out loud. Thanks for exploring with me. That's it for this video. See you later.